She was shivering from the cold. He gave her his blanket, and what happened next, no one would ever forget. The fire crackled quietly in the clearing, throwing orange light on the damp forest floor. Beyond the circle of warmth, shadows stretched like arms between the towering redwoods, ancient and silent. A cool wind rolled down from the mountains, rustling leaves and whispering secrets no human was meant to hear. Josh had set up camp just before sunset. Nothing fancy. A simple canvas tent, a folding chair, and the fire he'd built with practiced ease. He wasn't a seasoned survivalist, but he'd spent enough weekends hiking alone to feel at home under the stars. Tonight, though, the air felt heavier. Not just colder, but tense, like the woods were holding their breath. He stirred his cup of instant coffee, half listening to the distant hoot of an owl, when the sound came, soft, rhythmic, barely there. Footsteps? No, not boots. Lighter, softer, almost hesitant. He stood, every instinct on edge, and peered past the firelight into the dark. Nothing, but then movement, a shimmer of white, like a falling feather, then another, and suddenly, someone, stepped into view. Josh froze. She stood on the edge of the clearing, her body lean and tall, but not threatening. Her skin, even in the low light, shimmered a deep, organic green, like moss after a rain. Her hair cascaded in a sheet of pure white, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Eyes large and silver, reflective like mirrors, locked on his. She was barefoot, drenched, shivering. Josh's brain fumbled for logic. A costume? A prank? Some kind of experimental makeup? But nothing about her moved like a human pretending. She looked lost. "Hey," he said quietly, slowly lifting his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "Are you okay?" She flinched at the sound of his voice, as if it echoed differently in her head. Her mouth opened, but only a breath escaped. Her gaze darted between him and the fire. "You cold?" he asked, noticing her arms now crossed tightly over her torso. Goosebumps, or something like them, ran across her forearms. The tremble was real. Instinct kicked in. Josh pulled the blanket from his chair, a thick, military-style wool throw, and held it out. She hesitated. "It's okay," he said softly, taking a step closer. "You're freezing." For a second, he thought she'd run. But then, with almost painful caution, she stepped forward. Her eyes never left his, and when her fingers touched the edge of the blanket, his breath caught. Her skin was cold, not just chilly, freezing, like ice running under silk. She took the blanket, wrapping it around herself clumsily, eyes flicking down to observe the texture. She seemed fascinated by the fabric, tracing its fibers like it was something sacred. "Sit by the fire," he offered, gesturing toward the opposite side. "It'll help." She didn't respond, but she moved slowly and lowered herself cross-legged onto the damp earth, still wrapped tight in the blanket. Steam rose faintly off her shoulders as the warmth began to seep in. Josh sat too, trying not to stare. She was beautiful, in a way that didn't make sense. Not human beautiful, otherworldly, ethereal. Every motion precise, yet unsure. Every glance held questions, but no fear. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. He tried again. "Can you understand me?" More silence. Then a tiny nod, so she could hear him, maybe even understand, but couldn't speak, or wouldn't. Josh ran a hand through his hair, glancing up at the stars. Something insane was happening. This wasn't a costume. That hair, that skin, there was no faking it. And the eyes, he'd never seen eyes like that outside of sci-fi. "You're not from here, are you?" She looked at him, and for the first time smiled. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but unmistakably sincere. It wasn't a human smile. There were no dimples, no teeth, just a soft, serene curve of her lips that said, "You're not wrong." Josh chuckled, part nerves, part disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening." She tilted her head. "You hungry?" he asked. She blinked. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a protein bar. Not gourmet, but better than nothing. He tossed it gently across the fire. She caught it, surprisingly fast, then inspected the packaging with cautious curiosity. After a few tries, she managed to open it, sniffed the contents, then took a small bite, and smiled again. Josh leaned back, exhaling. Well, guess that's universal. They sat in silence for a while, her warming by the fire, still swaddled in the blanket, him sipping cold coffee and trying to process the fact that he might be sharing a campsite with a being from another planet. He didn't know who she was, what she wanted, if someone, or something, was looking for her. But at that moment, none of that mattered. She was cold, and scared, and somehow, she found her way to him. Josh watched her watching the fire, mesmerized by its motion, like it was magic. And maybe it was. Josh didn't sleep that night. He tried, rolled into his sleeping bag, closed his eyes, focused on the rhythm of the wind and fire. But every time he drifted towards sleep, a single thought yanked him back. She's real. She hadn't moved much after eating. She sat there, unmoving, watching the fire, wrapped in his blanket like a fragile relic. A few times her eyes closed, but not like someone sleeping, more like someone meditating. Still, alert, listening. Around 3 in the morning, the fire burned low. Josh got up quietly, added more wood, careful not to startle her. But she still noticed. Her head turned the instant he moved, tracking his every step. Not afraid, just observant, as if she were cataloging every detail about him, this world, this moment. When the sun began to rise, casting amber light through the towering trees, she finally shifted. She stood slowly, the blanket slipping from her shoulders, and stepped into the light. Josh had expected her green skin to fade in daylight, like paint under harsh conditions. But it didn't. It deepened. Her body glowed faintly under the morning sun, the kind of glow that couldn't be artificial. He watched, awestruck, as she touched a nearby fern with reverence. She bent close, examining the dew, then placed her palm against the bark of a tree as if greeting an old friend. Her fingers lingered. The tree creaked, a subtle, low sound, and Josh swore the leaves above rustled toward her. He stood up. "Hey," he said softly, still cold. She turned, and then, for the first time, she tried to speak. What came out wasn't English, not even close. It was sound, melodic, layered, like a chord of notes sung at once. It echoed through the trees like wind chimes in a storm. Josh blinked. I didn't catch that." She tilted her head again and pointed, not at him, but past him, into the woods. Josh turned to look. Nothing, just trees and fog. Then he heard it, a pulse. Faint, mechanical. The sound didn't belong. She stepped closer to him, her expression sharp, concerned. He didn't need a translator to understand what that meant. Trouble. Josh grabbed his bag and stuffed it with the essentials. Knife, canteen, flashlight. His hand hovered over the flare gun, a backup in case he got lost. Something told him to take it. She was already moving, light on her feet, scanning the trees like she knew the layout of the forest by heart. Josh had a job to keep up. "Are you being followed?" he asked, though he knew she couldn't answer. Still, she glanced at him, then looked away. That was enough. They moved fast, ducking under low branches, weaving through brush. Josh hadn't hiked this deep into forest. His sense of direction was slipping. No trail markers, no signs, just nature, dense and infinite. He finally caught his breath when they reached a stream, narrow, cold, and fast. She paused here, crouched low, dipping her fingers in the water. Her other hand hovered just above the surface, and to Josh's shock, the stream responded. The current shifted, as if reacting to her presence. Water curled around her skin like silk. "You're connected to it," he muttered. She looked at him, almost apologetically. Then she stood, but before they could move again, the pulse returned. Louder, closer. Josh heard the hum behind it now, a low, mechanical vibration that did not belong in the forest. The ground beneath his boots vibrated subtly. Something was coming. She grabbed his hand. The touch startled him, not just the feel of her skin, which was no longer ice cold but now oddly neutral, like stone warmed by sun, but the urgency in her eyes. They ran. Branches scraped his face, roots tried to trip him, and still she pulled him forward like she knew exactly where to go. Then a clearing, and in the center of it, wreckage, metal twisted like ribbon. A pod, maybe, burned and half buried in the earth. Symbols lined its hull, glowing faintly. A breach in the side smoked gently. Josh stopped dead. "This is yours," he whispered. She stepped forward, hand trembling as she touched the hull. The moment her fingers made contact, a faint light bloomed from the metal, blue, pulsing in waves. The hum grew louder. From behind them, a click. Josh spun, heart in his throat. 3 figures emerged from the trees. Tall, armored, inorganic. They looked like walking exoskeletons, but moved too fluidly to be machines. Each held a weapon, long and sleek, glowing red at the tips. One raised its hand, signaling. The alien girl turned slowly, placing herself between them and Josh. "No," he started. She sang. The sound that left her mouth wasn't speech. It was command, a vibration of power and warning and sorrow, all laced into one haunting note. The figures froze, and for a second, Josh believed it might work. Then, one of them raised its weapon. She didn't hesitate. She reached toward the ground, and vines exploded from the earth, thick and fast, wrapping around the attacker's limbs, yanking it backward with terrifying force. Josh stumbled back, eyes wide. The other 2 raised their weapons, but she was already moving, twisting, summoning roots and branches like extensions of her will. Josh reached into his pack, fumbled for the flare gun, and fired into the air. A red streak blazed upward, exploding above the trees. Not for rescue, for warning, because something was happening in these woods, and it was way bigger than him. The attackers broke free, one lunging straight at her. Josh moved on instinct, swinging his flashlight like a club, smashing it across the back of the figure's helmet. It barely flinched, but it was enough. She lashed out with a tendril of green light. No, not light. Energy. It struck the attacker like a hammer, flinging it across the clearing. Then everything went quiet. The 3 figures lay motionless. She stood panting, eyes glowing faintly silver. Josh couldn't move. She turned to him, her expression shifting, no longer calm. Fear. She touched his chest, just once, then pointed at the wreckage behind her. Then to the sky. Josh understood. More were coming, and she wasn't safe here anymore. Josh had seen strange things before. He'd seen blizzards twist trees like pretzels. He'd seen a cougar once, a flash of muscle and silence on a distant ridge. He'd even seen lightning strike, so close it made the ground hiss. But nothing compared to this. He stood in the wreckage clearing, staring down at the bodies, or shells, of the 3 attackers. Their armor was cracked open like beetle shells. Steam rose from the impact wounds. Whatever they weren't human, but they also weren't invincible. That much was clear now. The girl, the alien, knelt beside the wreckage of her pod, her white hair tangled and damp with sweat. She pressed both palms to the blackened hull. A faint green light pulsed from her hands, like she was willing the metal to respond. Josh approached, slowly. "You okay?" he asked, not sure why he expected an answer. She didn't speak, but her shoulders moved in shallow, exhausted breaths. Whatever she'd done to those things had cost her. He looked back at the attackers. "They were hunting you," he said quietly. "You crashed, and they came after you." She glanced at him. A slow nod. Josh crouched beside her, brushing ash from the hull. "Can this thing fly?" She didn't nod, didn't shake her head. Instead, she touched the wrecked surface again, and a small panel hissed open. Inside, a single glowing crystal pulsed erratically, dimming more with each flicker. Josh didn't understand the tech, but he recognized failure when he saw it. "It's dying," he said, "like a battery running out." She looked at him, then looked toward the sky. A low rumble sounded in the distance. Josh turned. Not thunder. Engines. Far off but closing in. More of them. She didn't respond, but she stood. Fast. Urgent. Her posture had changed. Less fluid. More desperate. She grabbed Josh's hand again and pulled him away from the pod. "Wait, what about?" But she stopped him with a look, then pointed at the sky, then at him. "You need to survive. Not me." Josh's gut twisted. "No," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving you." She stared at him, eyes wide, and for a moment, there was something else behind that silver gaze. Something unspoken. Not fear, not gratitude, guilt. Josh didn't have time to press. The sound of engines grew louder, now distinct, a shriek of turbine rotors slicing through the trees. They ran. The forest welcomed them again, branches clawing at their arms, the soft earth eating their footsteps. Josh's lungs burned, but he pushed harder. She moved faster than him, even while weakened, like she belonged to this world, even if she didn't come from it. A flash of light erupted behind them. Josh looked back. A spotlight had been cast over the clearing. A ship, sleek and sharp like a blade, hovered above the trees. Figures dropped from it on cables. He ran harder. They burst into another clearing, this one smaller, thick with moss and fallen logs. Josh stumbled, caught himself, turned to speak, but she was already gone. Hey! Then he saw her, crouched behind a tree, motioning him to stay down. They weren't alone anymore. A voice echoed through the woods. Synthetic. Cold. Unit 3. Report status. Target last seen, near impact zone. Search perimeter. Terminate human witness if engaged. Josh's blood turned to ice. They knew he existed, and they didn't plan to negotiate. He crawled low beside her, breath ragged. They're going to kill us both. She looked at him, then raised her hand, slowly, and touched his temple with her fingertips. A jolt, but not pain. A vision, not words, not images. A rush of emotion. Fear. Loneliness. A fall from the stars. A desperate escape. And him, his fire, his blanket, his kindness. A warmth she hadn't known before. Josh gasped, stumbling back. What the hell was that? She didn't answer, just looked at him. And now, he understood something vital. She didn't mean for him to be part of this. He was a bystander who made a choice, a small, human gesture. And now he was being hunted for it. Josh stood, slowly. No, he said. We're not hiding. We run again. They keep coming. There has to be a way to stop them. She looked up at him, searching. He scanned the clearing. Trees, roots, moss, and then the stream. It wasn't far. The same stream from earlier. He remembered how it had moved for her. Responded. Can you do it again? He asked. With the forest? She didn't answer. Just stood, eyes narrowing in focus. She raised both hands, slowly. The earth quivered. The moss thickened. Branches coiled. The very air changed, denser, humming with energy. Josh backed up as the clearing seemed to breathe. Then, behind them, footsteps. They'd been found. 2 armored figures stepped into the clearing. They raised their weapons. Josh stepped forward. Itchy why, he shouted. Both heads turned. The girl moved fast. Her hands dropped, and the forest attacked. Vines shot from the ground like whips. Roots exploded upward, grabbing one figure by the legs and slamming it against a tree. The second raised its weapon, fired. Josh saw it too late. A red bolt of energy. And then, her. She stepped in front of him. The bolt hit her chest. She dropped. No! Josh screamed, catching her before she hit the ground. The second attacker took aim again, but the forest was already screaming back. A tree cracked, toppled, and smashed down on the armored figure with a sickening crunch. Josh didn't see it. He was on the ground, holding her in his arms. Her chest was burned, smoking slightly. Her breathing was shallow. No, no, no. You don't get to save me and die, he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. She raised one trembling hand and placed it over his heart. Again, the pulse of feeling. Sorrow. Apology. Connection. No. Josh whispered, tears now burning his eyes. You don't get to leave. But she smiled. The same soft smile from the fire. Like everything was okay. And then, she closed her eyes. Josh couldn't hear anything anymore. Not the wind in the trees. Not the hum of distant engines. Not even his own heartbeat. Just the silence. She lay in his arms like a fallen branch. Weightless, still, too quiet for something that had moved through the forest like lightning. The burn on her chest still smoked faintly, the green of her skin dimming at the edges like dying embers. No, 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 he whispered, pressing a shaking hand against the wound. Don't do this. Not now. He didn't know what species she was, didn't know what was normal for her, or how to help. But the look in her eyes before she collapsed haunted him. Not fear, not pain. Peace. Like she'd been ready to go. Josh wasn't. He gritted his teeth, slid an arm under her knees, and lifted her. She was lighter than he expected, fragile, but not weak. Like something sculpted from living stone and silk. He ran. He didn't care where anymore. The stream curved ahead, and instinct told him to follow it. The forest wasn't just wild, it was alive. He'd seen it respond to her. Somewhere in this wilderness, there had to be more. Somewhere, there had to be hope. Josh pushed forward, his legs aching, lungs on fire. He stumbled once, twice, but didn't stop. Her head rested against his chest now, breath barely there. After what felt like hours, the trees thinned. A clearing, but not like the others. This one was different. Rocks formed a perfect ring around a moss-covered pool. Vines spiraled upward like braids, curling toward the sky. In the center, a single stone, flat and smooth, surrounded by tiny blue blossoms that glowed softly, just like the ones etched into the wrecked pod. Josh didn't understand, but her body reacted the moment they entered. A soft light pulsed under her skin, faint but unmistakable. "Okay," he whispered, placing her down on the stone. "If this place means anything to you, do something. Please." He stepped back, breathless, watching. Nothing. She didn't move. The light under her skin faded again. "No," he muttered. "Don't fade on me. You can't just give up." He dropped to his knees beside her, gripping her hand. It was colder now, colder than that first night. Her fingers twitched slightly, but didn't close around his. He looked up at the sky, blinking away tears. "If anyone's out there, anyone who can hear me, see me, anything, she's not a threat. She didn't hurt anyone. She saved me. I don't know what kind of monsters sent those things, but she fought them off. She protected me." He leaned closer. "She gave up her ship, her safety, herself, just to keep me alive. So if there's anything left in this forest, this planet, this universe that still listens to people like me, I'm begging you." His voice cracked. "Don't let her die." Then a breeze, but not like before. Warm, gentle. It circled the clearing like a breath. Josh opened his eyes. The blue flowers around the stone had bloomed wider, glowing brighter, and beneath his hand, her skin was warming. He gasped. A soft vibration rippled through the stone beneath her. The water in the mossy pool shimmered, casting patterns of light across her body. And then she inhaled. A real breath. Deep, clear. Her chest rose and fell. Josh scrambled back, watching in disbelief. Her eyes opened slowly, not silver this time, but white hot, like fire reflected on ice. She sat up slowly, looking around the clearing, then at him. Josh was speechless. "You came back," he said softly. She tilted her head, then reached out, placing a hand over his heart again. Another surge, but this time stronger, clearer. Josh didn't just feel her now. He heard her. A voice, not from her lips, from within his mind. "You shouldn't have stayed." Josh blinked, stunned. "You can talk." Her hand dropped. Not exactly speech, more like shared thoughts. But it was enough. "You risked everything," the voice said. "What?" He laughed, half hysterical, half overwhelmed. "You're asking me? You jumped in front of a death beam for me. That's not something people forget. They will come again." He nodded. "I figured. If they find you, they'll destroy everything connected to me. Everything you are. Everyone you know." Josh swallowed. "I know. Then why did you not run?" He looked her in the eyes. Not alien anymore. Not foreign. Just her. The being he gave a blanket to. The being who looked at his fire like it was magic. The one who smiled without words. "Because I couldn't leave you." For the first time, her expression changed completely. Not just a smile, a realization. "You're not like the others." Josh chuckled, tired. "Most of us aren't. You just haven't met the right ones yet." A silence hung between them. Then she looked toward the sky. "They will return. In hours." Josh nodded. "Then we need a plan." She turned back to him, serious. "There's only one way. The beacon in my ship, it's still active. If I can reach it and reprogram the signal, I can send a false trajectory, lead them away from Earth." Josh frowned. "But they'll trace it back to you." "Yes." His gut clenched. "And they'll kill you." She didn't respond. "Then no. We're not doing that. There is no other way." Josh stood, pacing, furious now. "There has to be. I didn't drag you through half a forest just so you could walk back into a trap." She stepped forward, touched his hand gently. "You show me kindness. Warmth. I didn't know what it meant before. Now, I do. And that's worth protecting." Josh's eyes burned again. "Even if it costs me." He took her hands in his. "Then we do it together." She paused. A long moment. Then she nodded. "One last look at the sky. Then let's make it count. If you've ever rooted for an impossible love, subscribe now. Because this story is just getting started. They didn't speak much as they made their way back through the forest. Words felt too small for what hung between them now. Josh led the way, machete in hand, carving a quiet path back toward the crash site. Every step forward felt heavier. Every rustle of the trees a warning. He glanced back at her often, not because he feared she'd collapse again, but because part of him still couldn't believe she was real, alive, and walking beside him. She didn't touch the earth like he did. Her steps were soft, almost weightless. Where he stumbled on roots and rocks, she flowed, steady, fluid, in tune with the forest like it breathed with her. Her presence seemed to wake the woods around them. Birds fluttered closer. Leaves shimmered faintly as she passed. Even the wind curved with her motion. But her silence was louder than before. Josh knew why. They were going back to the crash site. Back to danger. To the beacon. To the choice that could kill her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as they neared the ridge. She didn't stop walking. "There is no other way." "Yeah, but what if there is and we're just not seeing it yet? I mean, Earth's a big place. We can hide. I know people. They would follow. They always follow." He sighed. "You're really willing to give yourself up?" She turned to face him. "You gave me warmth. You didn't have to. Now I give you silence. Safety. You deserve that much." Josh's throat tightened. "That's not what I want." She tilted her head. "I want you safe," he said. "Not me. Not just Earth. You. Alive. Free." A strange emotion passed through her face. Not confusion, but something deeper. She took a step closer, and when she reached out, her fingers traced the edge of his jaw. "You feel too much." He gave a weak smile. "I get that a lot." She lingered a moment longer, then lowered her hand and turned. The crash site was just beyond the ridge. They reached the clearing in silence. The wreckage still lay half buried in the earth, scorched and cracked. The smell of ionized metal hung thick in the air. One of the enemy corpses remained, half covered in moss. The other two were gone. "Scavenge?" Josh asked, pointing. She nodded. Her silver eyes scanned the trees with tension. "They're watching." Josh tightened his grip on the machete. "Then let's work fast." She approached the wreck. As before, the hole pulsed faintly at her touch. A new panel opened. Inside, a shimmering sphere, hovering between two copper arches, the beacon. Its light pulsed rhythmically, faster than before. A countdown, maybe, a signal increasing in strength. Josh looked up at the sky. "How long until they get here?" She hesitated. "Less than an hour." "Great," he muttered. "Any chance we can fake your death instead of sending them somewhere else?" She looked at him, intrigued. "Explain." Josh knelt by the wreck. "Okay, you said they're tracking your signal, right? What if instead of sending them to some distant decoy planet, we make them believe you already died here? That the ship crashed beyond repair? That your body's been vaporized?" She frowned. "That would require strong environmental evidence. A false heat signature. Debris. Bioresidue. Can we create that?" She knelt beside him. "Examine the beacon. With the right trigger, yes. If I overload the ship's core, the explosion would scatter enough residue to read as a fatal detonation." Josh nodded. "And then what?" "We run. Far. Immediately. Before the heat signature fades." Josh looked at her, eyebrows raised. "You sure you can survive that blast radius?" She looked him in the eyes. "Only if I don't hesitate." Josh felt it again, the pull in his chest. Not fear, not adrenaline. Attachment. What started with a blanket, a gesture, a fire, had become something deeper, something irreversible. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's fake your death." She got to work. Her hands moved with precision, rewiring components, adjusting internal parameters on the beacon. The alien interface flickered and hissed as data streamed across a cracked screen. Josh watched, impressed. She wasn't just instinct and grace. She was intelligence, honed and focused. She paused once, only once, and looked at him. "If this works, you'll be alone again." He stared at her, realizing what that meant. They'd separate. She'd survive, yes, but they couldn't stay together. Not if she wanted to disappear for good. He swallowed hard. "I'd rather know you're out there, somewhere, safe, than lose you to them." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. They finished the setup in 20 minutes. She calibrated the beacon to overload. The core would rupture, burn hot enough to simulate total body disintegration and scatter organic material from a vial of her blood she extracted with barely a wince. Josh set a timer. 5 minutes. She walked to him slowly. This is goodbye. He shook his head. Not if I find you again. She smiled. Not the mysterious, otherworldly smile from before, but one full of weight. Meaning. Then, without hesitation, she leaned forward and kissed him. Not a deep, dramatic kiss, but real, raw. Her hand on his cheek, her lips soft and warm against his. A silent thank you, a silent promise. When they parted, Josh's heart felt like it had cracked wide open. She turned, walked to the trees opposite the wreck, and raised her hand. The forest parted for her, literally. Branches moved, roots untangled, a narrow path opened. Run. Now. He hesitated. One last look, then took off down the path, the flare gun in one hand, the machete in the other. Behind him, the world lit up. A boom, deafening. The lights swallowed the clearing, and the trees closed behind him like nothing had ever passed through. It had been 19 days since the explosion. Josh counted them without needing to. His brain marked each sunrise like a scar, tallying the quiet hours he filled with long hikes, failed sleep, and the echo of her voice in his mind. She was gone. Not just missing, gone in a way that left no trail, no clues. Just heat-blasted earth, and a crater where the ship had been. The blast worked exactly as planned. When the search teams came, human ones, government ones, they found nothing but wreckage, no sign of survivors, no hint of who or what had been there. Josh never spoke to them. He told them he'd been hiking and saw smoke. That's it. He kept the rest inside. The truth didn't belong to the world anymore. It belonged to them. Now, he was back home in Montana, in the cabin his grandfather had built with his bare hands. Remote. Quiet. No neighbors for miles. Usually it brought him peace. Now it felt like a ghost. Josh stood at the edge of his porch, staring at the trees. It had snowed the night before, just enough to paint the pines white. The same trees where he'd once seen her hair shimmer like moonlight. The memory stabbed. He still had the blanket. It sat folded on the chair by the fire, not washed. He couldn't bring himself to. Her scent lingered, faint, like crushed leaves and wind. Sometimes, late at night, he thought he heard her. Not words, just presence. Like his chest remembered something his mind couldn't explain. He knew it was grief. He also knew it was something more. One night, after another failed attempt to sleep, he sat by the fire and pulled out the journal. He hadn't written in it since he was a teenager, but the words poured out now. She moved like wind. She never spoke with her mouth, but I understood her more than most people I've ever met. I'd give anything to know if she made it. If she's okay. If she still thinks about Earth. About me. He stared at the page for a long time, then wrote one more line. I don't think she's gone. He didn't know why he wrote it. He just didn't. The next morning, something was different. There were marks in the snow. Not animal prints. Not boots. Bare feet. Slender. Symmetrical. Each one melted slightly around the edges as if left by something warm. And the stride, graceful. Deliberate. Josh stared at the path. It led away from the porch and toward the tree-line. He followed. Every part of him screamed that this was impossible. And yet, every step felt familiar. The tracks wound gently between trees, leading to the base of a ridge, then deeper, to a part of the forest he hadn't explored in years. Then he saw it, carved into the bark of a towering pine. A symbol. Not random. Not graffiti. A circle, nested inside 3 crescent arcs. The same shape etched on the pod. The same one she'd traced with her fingertip on the dirt the night they hid by the stream. Josh reached out, touching the bark. It was warm. He looked around. Are you here? He said softly. No answer. But something shimmered, faint, behind the trees. A pulse of green, like light moving through leaves. He followed it. Deeper. Farther. His breath frosting in the cold air. Until he reached another clearing. This one smaller. Tighter. More intimate. And she was there, sitting beside a tree, cross-legged, her hair loose and white as before, but her skin now glowing with a gentle radiance. Her eyes met his, no surprise in them, just knowing. Josh froze. For a second, his breath caught. Then he took a step, and another, and she stood. Is it really you? He asked, afraid to blink. She walked to him, slow and calm. When she reached him, she placed her hand over his chest again. No pulse this time, just warmth. And then, the voice. Not inside his head. This time it came out soft. Real. Spoken. I never left. Josh stared at her, heart pounding. But the explosion, you were gone. I thought. The forest held me. After the blast, I became part of it for a while. You hid in the forest itself. She nodded. They scanned for me, but found only heat, ash, decay. I became silence, roots, memory. Josh couldn't believe what he was hearing, but somehow it made perfect sense. The forest had always responded to her. Maybe this was what she meant when she said she'd give him safety. You were right, she said softly. There are other ways. I survived because you believed there were. Josh didn't speak. He just stepped forward and took her hands in his. They stood there in the clearing, surrounded by snow and breath and silence, but it wasn't empty. It was whole. After a long pause, he said, So what happens now? She looked at the sky. They believe I'm dead. That gives us time. Time to decide. He smiled, for the first time in weeks. Then let's not waste it. She smiled back, wider this time, and leaned her forehead gently against his. They stayed that way for a long time. The snow melted early that year. Josh noticed it before anyone else. The frost was thinning too fast. The animals were quieter. The wind carried something different, static, faint, but unmistakable. Something was wrong. She felt it too. They were sitting on the porch of his cabin when her eyes narrowed and lifted to the horizon. The veil is cracking. Josh leaned forward. What does that mean? They're looking again. More aggressively. Something shifted. He stood. They think you're still alive. She nodded. They always doubt silence. And now they search deeper. With machines that don't trust death. Josh grabbed his pack. What do we do? There's one option left. She turned to him, her voice soft but certain. We make sure they find someone else. Josh froze. Wait, what do you mean someone else? She stood now, stepping into the edge of the trees, her silhouette framed in soft blue light from the rising moon. A decoy. Something strong enough to draw them away again. Not a fake this time. A living echo. He moved to her side. You're not using yourself again. No. She looked at him. You are. The silence between them cracked like glass. What? They're not looking for me anymore. They're looking for who helped me. You are now the anomaly. The variable. The one who broke the pattern. Josh shook his head. That's insane. You want me to be bait? Yes. Because you're the only one they won't kill immediately. He stepped back. And what? They grab me, scan me, interrogate me. If they believe you're alone, they'll stop looking. They'll assume I was a glitch. A mistake. Josh was trembling now. Not from fear, but from the brutal logic of it. It made sense. And that made it worse. How long would they keep me? I don't know. He turned away, eyes burning. I won't let them take you, she said. But if they take me again, it's over. I won't escape twice. I won't survive. Josh clenched his fists. And if I don't make it out, she stepped forward. Her voice shook. Then I'll find you. A pause. And then she reached for him, her hands warm on either side of his face. You gave me a chance. You gave me a name, a meaning. If I lose you, I lose that. He swallowed hard. I'm not a hero. You were when it mattered. They stood there in the cold, everything unsaid between them burning hotter than fire. Josh nodded slowly. Tell me what to do. The plan was simple. Josh would take the flare gun, hike toward the northern ridge where the comm beacons were rumored to have blind spots, and fire the signal. High, bright, visible from orbit. He'd hike alone. No ship, no gear. Just a trail of heat and radiation from one of the salvage cores she'd helped him wire into his pack. If they scanned for anomalies, they'd see him. Not her. And they'd come. She stood on the other side of the clearing, watching him gear up. He turned one last time. This goodbye again. This is pause. He nodded, heart racing. She stepped forward and pressed something into his hand. A tiny crystal, glowing green. Memory stone. If they take you, focus on me. This will hold you together. He squeezed it tight, then leaned in and kissed her again. Longer this time. Deeper. Like the first and last kiss of a lifetime. Then he turned and walked into the trees. They came faster than expected. The sky cracked open 2 hours later, and a dark vessel descended silently, massive and gleaming like oil in moonlight. It didn't hum. It vibrated. like sound was being torn apart around it. Josh was ready. He stood in the center of the ridge, arms open, no weapons. The ship hovered for 3 seconds. Then the light swallowed him. He didn't scream. He didn't move. He thought of her. The crystal in his hand pulsed once. And then, darkness. He woke strapped to a curved metal wall, floating slightly in gravity he didn't recognize. The light was sterile. Everything smelled like heat and ozone. A voice filled the chamber. Not hers. Subject identified. Human. Class C. Civilian. Outlier. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. You made contact with non-cleared species. Irregular behavior. You protected deviation. You obstructed protocol. Josh forced his voice forward. I saved her life. Silence. Then, what? He smiled. Because she deserved it. A pause. You would do it again. Josh lifted his head. Every time. The machine clicked. Calculating. Searching. Species threat. Moderate. Sentiment level. High. Decision. Archive not eliminate. Josh blinked. Wait, what does that mean? You will not die. You will be stored. Stored. The room dimmed. Goodbye, variable. And then, everything faded. In the forest, far below, she watched the ship disappear behind clouds. She stood still for a long time. Too long. Then she closed her eyes. And the wind shifted. Some say the trees in those hills grow differently now. Taller. Twisting towards something unseen. And sometimes, hikers hear voices in their dreams, in languages they don't speak. No one knows the truth. But deep in the forest, buried beneath roots and time, a stone pulses softly, waiting for him. Time didn't pass inside the archive. Not any way Josh could feel. There were no clocks. No day. No night. Just the hum of containment fields and the faint vibration beneath his feet, like he was floating inside the thought of a machine. He wasn't in a cell, exactly. There were no walls. No visible doors. But he couldn't leave. Every path he walked returned him to the same place. The same glowing node in the center of the space. It pulsed in sync with something he couldn't understand. Sometimes he spoke aloud. To no one. Sometimes he whispered her name. And sometimes, only sometimes, the crystal she gave him flickered in his palm. Faint light. A heartbeat that reminded him she was still out there. He didn't know how long he'd been inside. Could have been days. Could have been years. But he remembered everything. Her voice. Her warmth. That first night, when she stepped out of the trees, shivering, alien, and more human than anyone he'd ever known. He'd do it again. He'd give her that blanket every time. That thought kept him sane. Far away, on Earth, spring arrived too soon. Birds migrated early. Rain came down hard. Plants bloomed where they shouldn't have. Botanists blamed climate flux. Ecologists logged anomalies. She knew better. She could feel it. The forest wasn't just changing, it was mourning. Josh's absence left a mark. Not just on her, but on everything that had touched him. Trees he walked past leaned inward now. Stones warmed when she sat near them. Streams curved differently through the land. It wasn't grief. It was memory. She moved carefully through the world now. No longer hiding, but not fully present either. A ghost in reverse. Each day, she checked the clearing, where the ship had exploded. The moss had grown back, soft and lush, but the stone remained scorched in the shape of his boot prints. She sat there often, and waited. Months passed. At least, that's how she measured it. She counted moon cycles and wind shifts. Animals returned. The world kept spinning. But for her, nothing moved forward. Until the dream. One night, as she lay curled beneath the canopy, she felt it. The pulse. Not from the forest. Not from the earth. From him. The memory crystal glowed white-hot against her skin, humming with pressure. She sat up, gasping, and for the first time in weeks, she heard him. Not words, but emotion, loneliness, strength, and a spark of something else. Hope. She didn't sleep again. She returned to the deep grove, the oldest place in the forest, where roots tangled like veins beneath the earth, where her kind had once landed long ago, before hiding from the stars. She placed the crystal on the altar stone, closed her eyes, and did what she had feared for so long. She called them, not the ones who hunted her, but the ones who watched, the ancient ones, the silent kind, the ones who stored knowledge between planets and whispers. The ones who guard the fractures. The air thickened. The grove shifted. And something answered. Josh woke to light. For the first time since his capture, the archive wasn't gray. Color bled into the space, soft gold and green, like sunlight breaking through fog. The air smelled like pine and water. He stood, blinking. The node pulsed harder now. Faster. Then, movement. From the edge of the space, where there had never been a wall, a door opened. Not mechanical, not metal. A portal of sorts, formed from roots and light and breath. It shimmered like a reflection on water. And, through it, he saw her, standing at the threshold, eyes locked on his. No glass between them. No walls. No gravity field. Just distance. And the choice. She extended her hand. Come home. Josh didn't hesitate. He stepped through. The forest accepted him like an old friend. When his boots touched soil again, the air hit his lungs like fire and memory. His knees buckled, and she caught him, both arms around him, holding tighter than before. Neither of them spoke for a long time. When they finally pulled apart, he touched her face, still unbelieving. You found me. You left a trail, she whispered. He laughed, eyes burning. I didn't even know I had one. She smiled. Brush his hair back. Everything you love leaves roots. He looked around the clearing, alive with motion, color, light. Where are we? Somewhere safe. For now. He nodded. Is this real? Does it feel real? He kissed her. Yes. That night, they sat side by side on the edge of a shallow lake. No more hiding. No more running. Just silence and breath and starlight. I thought I'd never see you again, he said. I never stopped seeing you. He looked at her, eyes soft. Do they know I'm gone? They think you're still archived. He exhaled. And how long until they figure out they're wrong? Not long. He turned to her. Then let's make it count. She rested her head on his shoulder. Until the end. Some stories don't end with a bang. They end in whispers. In the rustle of leaves. In quiet breathing side by side. Josh used to think the most powerful moments in life came with noise, shouts, tears, explosions. But now, as he lay in a forest that shouldn't exist, next to someone who shouldn't be real, he understood something deeper. It wasn't the moment that changed everything. It was what came after. The silence. The decision. The choice to stay. They built a life in fragments. No fences. No clocks. Just routine and rhythm with nature. He gathered. She shaped. He taught her how to laugh with his mouth open. She taught him how to hear with his eyes closed. They didn't talk about the ship, or the archive, or the ones who still hunted the stars. But the weight of it hung between them. A shadow with a name neither of them dared speak aloud. Temporary. They both knew this wouldn't last forever. But neither of them lived for forever anymore. They lived for now. One morning, she watched him sleep. The sun was rising through the trees, slicing golden lines across his back. He'd been dreaming. She could feel the emotion radiating off his breath. Soft joy, restless longing, familiar safety. She touched his temple, gently. He stirred, smiled. Did I snore? No, she said. But you said my name. He sat up, rubbing his face. Yeah? What did I say? You said it like it was everything. He looked at her. It is. She closed her eyes. I don't want to disappear. He reached for her hand. You won't. But they both knew it wasn't a promise anyone could make. In the weeks that followed, the forest changed again. The animals grew quieter. Birds flew farther. Wind carried the scent of metal, not from earth. They didn't talk about it, but they moved camp. Deeper. Farther. Josh carved symbols into stones, markings only she could read. If he was taken again, she'd follow them. If she was lost, he'd search for those signs. They had a system now, built from trust. But every system has a limit. One evening, as they sat around a low fire, she finally spoke what they'd both been avoiding. They're coming again. Josh looked into the flames. How many? More than before. He nodded. What do we do? Run. If we're lucky. Survive. If we're smart. Josh let the silence breathe. Are we smart? She looked at him. No. We're in love. He laughed, even as his chest ached. Then we're doomed. She smiled. Maybe. And yet, there was no fear in their voices anymore. Because everything that could be taken from them had already been risked. Everything that could be said had already been lived. She wasn't a secret anymore. He wasn't alone anymore. They were real. Together. And maybe that was enough. On a rainy night not long after, Josh stood at the edge of a ridge, watching the clouds crack with lightning. He thought of the first night again. The cold, the fire, the blanket, the moment he could have chosen to turn away, but didn't. I didn't save her, he whispered to no one. She saved me. Behind him, she stood quietly. You still don't understand. He turned. What don't I get? She walked to him, reached for his hand. It wasn't just warmth you gave me, or shelter. It was permission. He frowned, confused. Permission. To feel. To care. To stop running. He stared at her, finally seeing the depth of it. Everything she was had been locked away behind instinct, survival, fear. And that night, when he wrapped her in a simple blanket, when he didn't ask what she was, only if she was cold, he had shattered the wall she never knew she'd built. He didn't see a weapon, a threat, an alien. He saw someone who needed kindness. And that changed everything. For both of them. Now, as thunder rolled across the horizon, and the stars blinked in irregular patterns overhead, Josh knew time was short. But he wasn't scared anymore. He turned to her, squeezed her hand. We may not have forever. We don't need forever. Just now. Just now. Years passed. Or maybe decades. Time moved strangely for them. Slower, richer, deeper. Not because the days were longer, but because every single one concava. They never built a house. Never married. Never signed a paper or wore rings. But they shared something more binding than any contract. Memory. Not just shared memories. Intertwined ones. Woven together so delicately that when one dreamed, the other could feel it. They lived in places maps didn't know. Mountains that didn't appear on satellites. Valleys where the stars felt closer than the sky. They moved when they needed to. Hid when the wind changed. Loved between silencios. And still they knew. One day it would end. It came with no warning. A ripple in the sky. A flicker in the trees. A sound that didn't belong to Earth. Like glass breaking underwater. She felt it before he did. She stood still for a long time, listening, one hand resting on the stone that marked the place they first kissed. Then she looked at him. It's time. Josh didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply nodded. They made tea, sat together by the fire, wrapped in the same old blanket he once gave her, now frayed at the edges but warm as ever. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You taught me what warmth was, she said. He smiled. You taught me what enough feels like. Were you afraid? He shook his head. None of this. Only of never finding you. She looked into the flames. You found me more than once. And I would again, he said. They didn't pack. Didn't run. They just waited. When the light came, it wasn't violent. It drifted down through the trees like falling feathers. Silent. Gentle. A ship, yes, but different. Older. Wiser. Built not to conquer, but to collect. She stood as it landed, hand in his. He looked at her. You sure? She nodded. They're not hunters. They're keepers. He swallowed hard. And they want you back. They want to understand. Josh hesitated. Do they want me? She smiled. They want us both. They walked together into the light. The ship opened without sound. Its interior glowed soft green and gold, like sun through forest leaves. As they stepped inside, something happened. Not pain, not fear, something like weight lifting off their backs. A new silence, but not emptiness. Peace. She turned to him one last time before the door closed. No matter where they take us. He finished her sentence. We carry this. And he touched the blanket still draped around her shoulders. That was the last anyone ever saw of them. No news reports. No explosions. No search parties. Just two figures walking into light. And the forest, silent again, but not empty. 1 year later, in a small national park in Montana, a ranger found something strange at the base of an old redwood. A folded blanket. Worn, heavy, and still faintly warm. Inside it, a stone, etched with a single symbol. A circle wrapped in 3 crescents. And underneath it, written in careful, unfamiliar script. We were here, and it was enough. If this story moved you, leave a comment. If you've ever believed that love can change the course of a life, or an entire world, subscribe to Oka now. And if one day, someone strange asks you for help, give them your blanket. You never know what that kindness might become.